So now you've seen the functions of this truck on the floor, and it's time to get into the details. There's a lot of details with this truck, so I'm going to add timestamps so you can jump to the part that you want. There are building instructions for the truck. They are in the description below. If I get 1000 views on this video, I'm going to make building instructions for the trailer as well. Kind of an incentive to share this video. This one is special because it's run by a PFx Brick, which means that I can control it either from the app, as you saw on the floor, or I can use a remote control like this. And since the programming of this brick is so fancy with scripts and that kind of stuff, I'm going to go into details of that and show you how to program your own so that it becomes like this. And I'm going to really also show you how to make the scripts that I'm using. Okay, we are starting with the details of the truck. And it is a DAF XF 6x2. However, it's not the standard 6x2 that you see if you're going to configure your own DAF on the website, because it has a rear axle that is driven while the center axle is lifting. And it's done manually with this handle right here. Usually it's the rear axle that is lifting, so I'm not sure that this is an FTS, but I'm sure that if you are an expert, then you can tell me below what this setup is called. It's driven by an L motor right there and a servo motor for steering. So that setup is pretty conventional. Let's try to steer like this, and it has a differential, so I can just drive like this. Now it sounds a bit funny because I don't have the idling sound turned on, but I also have the driving here on channel 3. You can see the PFx Brick right here in the middle, and I don't have any cables for the lights going below the truck because they are rather fragile, so I have them going up inside of it. Here you can see how I'm using the handle in order to lift the second axle like that. So it's a rather simple mechanism, but it works. Let's look at the rear lights. So if I'm turning the truck on using channel 2 and then like this, you can see the lights come on, and they do that in the front as well. When I go into reverse, I'm running a script here on channel 1 by going backwards, and that turns on the rear lights, the reverse lights. It changes the motor direction so it goes backwards. And as you can hear, it also has a beeper. So that's 3 actions in one. If you're just setting them up using the app or the app on a computer, then it doesn't really work that well because it quickly becomes out of sync, and I'm not sure why. But using a script, it works really reliably. And let's just turn off the sound. I of course also have other functions such as the emergency blinkers by turning down on channel 2, and then we can park everywhere, as I used to say. If I go to channel 3, you can see that I have the no returns to center control, which makes it easy in theory to control this, but I find that it's actually working better with the system that I'm using on channel 1, where it's just full turning and then you make some more adjustments. That is up to you what you find is easier. I will show you in the description of the setup of the S-Brick or PFx Brick how to do this. What you might not have noticed in the demo before is that the rear lights also function as brake lights. So if I'm driving forward, let's do it on channel 3 so we don't have the sound, then you can see that I'm letting go of the brake as a driver, so the rear lights will just dim a bit. And then when we are stopping, you're applying the brakes, so they light up again. And that's the same when you go in reverse. I find that's a very nice little detail. The cables are fairly well hidden in this model. The only place where you can really see the PFx cables is if you're looking from the top here with the rear lights. You can see them right here. And the same with the lights in the front. You can just barely see that this is a PFx Brick setup. And of course there's space for the normal battery box. However, Since the PFx Brick is down here, the cables going up to the upper lights in the front are too short, so I've just added a normal power functions light up there, and then you can see they are a lot dimmer than the PFx lights, but they are also more white, where the PFx lights are more yellow. When it comes to the controller, when you saw it on the floor, I was controlling it using the app, so it has it pretty much resembles what you have for the controller. You can also set up as if you have the dual speed controller. I prefer this normal joystick right here, and you can control it just like a normal controller. So if I turn on the sound, the script for the startup, I can do that. I can turn on the emergency lights. I can steer and turn on off the emergency lights, and of course drive, reverse, and so on. That all works in theory. The big problem with using the app in this mode is that while the right side works perfectly fine most of the time, of course you can click outside of the buttons quite easily. They could be larger, but once you get used to that, then that works. On the left side, however, it's easy to do this. You see, it thinks I want to swipe because I'm clicking just outside of the button and then nothing happens. And this typically happens when I want to drive with it. So I really have to hit the button, and that is unfortunately something that easily gets out of alignment when I want to drive the truck. So that's a bit annoying, and it could be made better for imbeciles like me who have way too big fingers and have a hard time actually using the controller. So it's much easier to just have the physical controller here, of course. But if that could be fixed, and it's also an issue when you're in exactly the same issue, but not as pronounced, then that would be a really nice fix for the app. Otherwise, the app actually works really, really fine. When you're setting up everything, you can even set everything up just like in the app on the computer. So if there's small things you want to change in the app, then you can do just that. And that is really, really nice. Just fix the precision and swiping issue. That would be great. Let's compare it to the last truck I showed you with a PFx Brick, and that was the Renault Magnum. It has some limitations because of the PFx Brick being up here underneath of the ceiling. Of course, that's better for reception, whereas the location down here in the DAF means that it's really much better suited for being controlled using the app. Let's first turn them on, and then we can compare how they actually work. We have the startup sound, we have the light that comes on. You can't see it in the Renault because it's only in the front, but it has lights. And then we have the reverse actions, which are quite different. So in the DAF, I go into reverse by changing the direction here. And you can see the reverse lights come on, or they go off. In the Renault, you might remember that I'm having some trouble when I'm going in reverse, and I want to be precise, because when I just do like this, it doesn't really sound good with the beeper. It doesn't have the rhythm that I want, because the sound keeps getting starts and stops again and again, so that's not cool. That is really the difference between these two trucks. I like the programming of the DAF much more than what I did for the Renault, so I'm thinking of upgrading the programming of that one so that it becomes on par with what you see here for the DAF. Okay, let's set up the configuration for the DAF. This is the PFx app, and the first thing you want to do is to make sure that you have all of the audio files and all of the scripts. The 3 audio files here you can get from the building instructions. The scripts are also being added to the building instructions. This comes from the PFx website, so I'll add a link to that below and also in the building instructions. That's the first step. Let's look at the motor configuration. As you can see, everything here is pretty much default. I pull up the speed curve a bit so that it accelerates faster, otherwise it is a bit sluggish to get started. That is the only change I make here. In the settings, I really wanted to turn off that annoying beep sound whenever I'm playing a audio file. I've made a bug report in the PFx forum. Hopefully that'll be fixed in a later version. Let's look at the dual joystick. In channel 1, this is the normal control channel. When I'm accelerating, I will increase speed as the motor action. I will do it relatively slowly, so with 10 steps. The more steps you have here, the slower it will accelerate. Motor A is my L motor. And then I also want to do something for the lights. So put it on individual. I have channel 7 is my rear lights, and I want to dim the light. So set brightness here as the action, and then the brightness comes out so that you can set it. The audio, I have this audio file which sounds like acceleration, and the retrigger is just toggle. So it goes on and off, but you can ignore that for now. When you're stopping, I want to increase the brightness, so it's exactly the same before for the light, channel 7. Increase the light brightness compared to what you saw before, and I want to stop my motor. I have previously tried to just run with deceleration on the motor action, but I find that it can quickly just run away without braking quickly enough, and then you drive into things. I do not change the audio. For reversing, I run the script. Change direction. I will show you the scripts at the end. Let's look at the steering. Remember that channel 1 is the one where I'm full turning on the servo motor. So increase speed, bidirectional, 3 steps, so it's steering pretty quickly. Motor B is my servo motor. And then I want to do the light action, which is the blinker. So for that, it's the individual action that says 50% flasher plus. Number 4 is my right side blinkers, and my period is for 1 second. I can turn off the fade factor totally, and activation is turn this on. When I return to 0, I want it to stop so that it goes straight instead of keeping on steering. The light action is turn off for both 4 and 8 because that is both the left and the right blinkers that I want to turn off. So individual, on and off, those two. No extra options, no fade, no flicker, and I want it to turn off. That's it. No audio, no special command. Done. Reverse is just the opposite of going forward. So decrease speed, bidirectional, makes it turn to the left. Motor B as before, quickly with 3 steps. Individual, 50% flasher on the left side blinker. No fade, 1 second. Activation turn on. No audio, no special command. Done. That was a bit quick, but it's really just the same as forward, but with decreased speed instead of increased speed and a different light that we turn on. For channel 2, I want my special actions. Right forward is the script I have for the startup sound. As I said before, I will go through the scripts afterwards. Emergency lights is what I have on the left side, and you turn it on. But of course, there's no motor action. It's an individual that you turn on, and then 50% flasher on both channel 4 and channel 8. Same period as before when we were turning, and no fade. Toggle is what I want to do, because then if I activate this action twice, then it cancels the action, which is exactly what I want. No audio, no special command. Done. So the only 2 commands here on channel 2 that are important is the startup script and emergency lights. Typically, I turn on the emergency lights, and then I use channel 3 in order to make precise adjustments. For the steering, I have increased speed, but with a lot more steps. So 7 steps corresponds to the power functions. 7 steps, and that is what the servo motor is able to switch between. It doesn't really work that well. I don't know why, but this is how you should set it up. Remark, there's no blinker action here. There's no light action, and that is because I want to run whatever is on channel 3 together with the emergency light. No action for return to center because I wanted to keep the steering that I have put in, and then reverse is just decrease speed instead of increase speed. And everything is the same as for going forward. The left side of the joystick is pretty much the same as for channel 1. Set the brightness for the brake lights, increase speed for motor and in 10 steps, so it takes a while until you're up at speed. Change brightness when you're going back to center. Stop the motor, and run the script to change direction. These are the only 3 channels that I make any changes to, which means that channel 4 is by default increase, decrease volume, and increase, decrease brightness. You can ignore that. Press Save Configuration and it gets onto the brick, and that is it. Now let's take a look at the scripts. This is the first script, startup.txt. It is fairly simple. Everything that I have with this bang is being ignored. So DAF XF startup, it just means that it's a note to myself. I start out with everything off, that is turn off all the lights, the sound, and the motors. And this you do with these 3 commands. You don't have to add that, but it's nice to have in case a light is still on. Now, the sound that you want to play is DAF startup MP3, and that you do by running this command. This starts the 8-second long, or a bit more than 8 seconds, of startup sound. So first I wait a bit, the startup comes on, and then I turn on the lights. I think that's a realistic progression of events. 3 and 7 are the headlights and the rear lights. Then I wait a bit longer, remember that it's more than 8 seconds long. And then I start playing the idle sound. This one I want to have repeating all the time. So sound play DAF idle short.mp3 repeat does just that. So the startup script is rather simple. The other script is for changing direction. And this is not just something that works for the DAF. So I say this is model team truck direction change. It works also for the Renault. What you want to do in this script is make sure that when you are playing it, it goes into reverse mode. And when you're playing it again, it goes out of reverse mode. So you want to toggle everything that you see here. What we want to do with the motor is we want to stop it so that we can toggle the direction. So the first thing we do is to stop it. That makes us able to later change the direction, and that's these 2 motor commands that we use for that. It looks a bit complicated, but it's really just, if you look at the specification, then 001 here is for stopping, 006 is for changing direction. The other thing we want to toggle is the reverse beeper. When we run this command a second time, it cancels the sound. So it also gets toggled, and that is why this works. Finally, we have toggling of the light. If I just say light 2 on, it will not toggle when I run this script a second time. But the command that is 01 is toggling of the light. It needs 3 other parameters, so just leave them blank like this. And then it works with light number 2, which is our reverse light, should be toggled. And that is how this script works. And now you have just learned one of the most technically complicated ways of setting up a PFx brick, and that is using scripts. Let's take a quick look at the trailer. It is a brand new design. It has the Oceanic Airlines logo on the side from the television series Lost. So good job, Marsh. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you guessed it right when I showed you just a prototype of this trailer. And that was pretty well done because it was shown from the side where you couldn't see the logo at all. And this, of course, is built using a lot of advanced Lego building techniques, such as you can see I'm using a cheese slope here in the R. So it's taking up a lot of space inside of the trailer, but we're not going to use these for transporting anything. So it's, as long as it looks okay from the outside, everything is fine. And you can see here in the logo I used round tiles 1 by 1, and that is because I think that looks cool, even though the pink here is slightly different from what we have elsewhere in the design. The rest of the mechanisms of the trailer is, as you saw before on the by and large trailer and on the new green trailer. We have the legs that go down when you're in reverse, pull up when you are going further in reverse, and then you can drive forward. We also have the decoupler here in the front that goes down with the legs. So legs up, decoupler up, and legs down, decoupler down. Here you can see the axle that comes from the rear wheels to engage this mechanism. It is US style, so I have 2 axles in the back and they're moved to the back of the trailer because that's what I see very often in the US. And here in the front we have the curvature of the trailer, so that's really nice with some new parts that allow for that. We have the air brake hose connectors here in the front, similar to what you see on the US trailer. Please, anyone, if you have more expertise in this, tell me if I got any of the colors wrong. Let's just put the legs down. It only runs from a single wheel because we don't have that much space when we are working with just 2 axles compared to 3. So only one of the wheels is used in order to actually run the mechanism, but that's a trade-off. The design here in the back is new, so I've never made this rolling shutter design for the door because I ran out of parts for the normal design that I'm using for trailers. But this was a fun challenge to see if I could get this to work. And it looks pretty much like a normal US roller shutter semi-trailer. And it even works. Now, if you're just turning this handle here, of course it doesn't do anything, but then you can lift up and you can see that the shutter goes in. You have to help it a bit for it to work properly, but there we go. Then you can cheat a bit by putting on the sides in order to lock it. And here you can also see how much is happening inside of the trailer because of all of the building techniques used for the logos on the side. It closes really nicely. Then you can lock it like this. And that's it. That's the new mechanism for the trailer. As I mentioned before, there are building instructions for this DAF XF 6x2. They are in the description below, and if you follow those building instructions, you will get a nice truck. However, I do not show where to put the cables in those building instructions. I have some 2x2 orange parts in some steps, and whenever you see such a part, it means that instead of the orange parts, you can put in a power functions brick for the lights. So this is the brick for the top lights, and similarly there's a brick inside of the cabin for the normal lights. But the main lights, the 10 lights that you see in this truck right here, are for the PFx brick, as I showed you. So it lies there and the cables go on the top along the frame and to the front. So let's take a look at how those cables are routed. And for that we have to destroy the truck. Oh. Take that part off, and this right here, and this floor right here. So here you can see what's going on. We have the PFx brick, the Pico light control board, and then we're using the lights from the top of the board. They go in pairs in this kind of board here. So I have a pair for the headlights, a pair for the right blinkers, a pair for the left blinkers, a pair for the reverse lights, and a pair for the rear lights or the brake lights. You can see here there is some slack for the lights going to the back. So it's really just below that part right there, next to the fifth wheel coupler, to the left of this 1x1 plate and into the lights. And the lights are only hinged here from the top. It's a bit of weak connection, but it works. You can see I put the LEDs in from this side, wire it through this Airlines 1x1 headlight brick, and then together here. So it's fairly simple. I recommend keeping track of your wires as you are building the truck so you don't have to guess which ones go together. The infrared receiver sits down here in the middle, so if you can, get an extension cord for it and get that up to the top of the truck, because then the normal remote will work much better than what you see right here. It's really difficult to get a signal down to it as it is right here, and that's why I'm using the app. Let's remove this side right here, because then you can see the wires going up here in the side. And let's remove the wheel. So you can see this is the loudspeaker cable going down in here and then up right there and up into the cab of the truck. The instructions show you how to mount the loudspeaker, so there's no problem right there. That is the only cable going here. The other ones are wedged in between the PFx brick and this 4x10 plate here. That's all right. It does of course give you a little gap here, but I find that is the easiest route. You can also get in here to the front where you're routing down to the headlights and the blinkers. They are mounted quite similarly to what you saw for the Renault Magnum, and also what you see for the rear lights. That is, I'm using a pin half in gray here. You can also get them in blue. And I'm routing lights from the other side through this pin, and then that holds the LED in place. So that's why it's not pushed all the way into this 1x1 brick. That's because it's holding the LED. And by doing that, you can mount it without using much space, and then you get the lights actually lining up with the lights that you have here in front. That is the main part that you have to be aware of when you're building your own. And those are the details I wanted to show you for this DAF XF with the Oceanic Airlines trailer. I hope this video has been useful and that you can use the information I have given in order to set up your own truck, build your own, and even make a better program than I have done. If so, please comment below, and I'd love to see your version and recreation of it. Otherwise, have fun, take care, and I will see you in the next video.